Question. I inexplicably discovered 2 more bodies at home and was forcibly detained. What should I do? Fortunately, shortly after entering, Jiang He realized that as long as he was in prison, he could accumulate upgrade points to add to himself, which was simple and crude. Are you like a wolf, like a tiger? It doesn't matter, I just pulled my body full and transformed into a sports student sliding shovel to take it down. Are you exceptionally powerful enough to explode your watch? It doesn't matter, my resistance is full. Let's break through my defense first. By slacking off in prison every day, one's strength can continue to grow. Even if one manages to eat and control, who doesn't like this kind of life? What demons and monsters dare to delay my imprisonment? I can't bear it anymore. Blow the world apart with one punch. Novel keyword. Let you go to jail, how can you be invincible? No pop-ups, let you go to jail, why are you invincible? Download the complete set of TXT, let you go to jail. Why are you invincible? Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The world is fading, seeking investment collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The world is fading, seeking investment collection. Jiang He remembers preparing to do 2 things today. The first thing to do is to clean up the garage I rented in the waterfront area and dispose of all the unsightly books and movies inside, because there will be police patrols in 10 minutes, and if caught, it will be great. The second thing is to dispose of the dog poop left by the gatekeeper in his garage yesterday. But now there's a problem. The study materials are missing. The dog poop is also missing. But 2 more bodies, covered in restraint injuries all over their bodies, were tied to their own beds. The garage is not big, about 20 square meters, with a simple steel wire bed and a leather sofa inside. Steel wires were hung from the ceiling, and all clothes were hung on it, including Jiang He's underwear. No. Jiang He suddenly jumped up from the sofa and looked at the empty steel wire rope. Where are my underwear? I didn't expect that people's hearts have become so dark these days, not only throwing their bodies at me, but even taking away my study materials. I won't let go of my underwear. Is this something that people do? Sitting on the sofa again, Jiang He began to think about how to deal with the body on his bed. The police patrolling the garage were coming in a few minutes, and this time was definitely not enough to transport the body out on his own. It was not realistic to hide it in the garage, and it was difficult to explain how to handle it in such a large place. There's a way. Jiang He's mind flashed with a flash of inspiration. Just wrap it up and use it as a late-night toy, okay? I'm so smart. So he did it. Immediately after, the police came to inspect his garage and, without any surprise, discovered the late-night toys in his garage. So, are you trying to show that you didn't kill the person? I don't know who threw the body on your bed and stole your belongings. In the interrogation room of the Binbian District Guard House, glaring lights shone on Jiang He's face. 2 interrogating police officers sat in front of him and asked him the question. Jiang He nodded and said, "It's like this, officer. You have a great understanding and perfectly understood what I meant." The 2 police officers exchanged a glance, unsure of what to say. But the surveillance records showed that no one entered or exited the garage that day, and at least the surveillance footage for a week was the same. The time of death for the 2 bodies was 8 o'clock in the morning of that day. The police officer continued to record, "How do you explain this? But the surveillance footage didn't show me carrying the body inside." The police officer rubbed his temples and felt a headache. "Isn't that why we're interrogating you? If we know everything, you're not the suspect, and it's not us who's responsible for talking to you, it's the judge." After questioning for a long time, the 2 police officers did not come up with a reason, because Jiang He himself did not know why those 2 bodies appeared on his bed. Finally, due to the suspect's identity, Jiang He was forcibly detained and thrown directly into the detention center. At least until he completely clears the suspect's identity, he won't be able to come out for the time being. Damn it, what's going on? Jiang He sat down with an extremely unpleasant odor lingering in his nose. Fortunately, the detention center on this side of the waterfront is a single room, but it occupies a very small area. A steel wire bed leaning against the wall already occupies half of the room's space. In the remaining half of the space is occupied by the toilet. Only this small inch of space left is Jiang He's free activity space, without even a wash basin, which can be said to be quite tragic. Damn it, don't let me catch which newly promoted Dongshi is. The crime of murder is framed on my head, crazy. Upon hearing Jiang He's fragmented thoughts, an old man from the neighboring room rolled over on the bed and asked Jiang He, "Kid, listen to what the police officers said earlier. Did you kill someone? You just killed someone, buddy. 3 good young men. When they were young, they were still noble young pioneers. How could they have done such a thing?" The old man arched on the bed, adjusted to a comfortable position, and then looked around to confirm that there were no people before whispering to Jiang He, "I may have some eyebrows about this matter." What kind of eyebrows and eyes? Jiang He almost always pressed people against the cold wall, afraid of missing a word. "Grandpa, if this news helps me, where will there be beautiful aunties dancing square dancing in the future? I will inform you first." The old man whispered in a voice similar to his own fan, "Maybe it's the willow seeds in the Binbian area that dry them. Nyozi knows how to do it." Just hearing this name makes him stand out. Jiang He quickly asked for details. "What's the relationship with this group of people? I heard that people from the Willow Seed Society have committed many evil deeds, often committing such acts of killing people, framing and blaming others. You are not the first person to come in because of this." Upon hearing these words, Jiang He did not expect such thugs to still exist in the vast coastal area. Do these guys have the ability to bypass surveillance? The old man tapped the steel wire bed surface with his fingertips and said, "Yes. Because among them, there are extraordinary beings." Extraordinary. Jiang He is quite familiar with this term. The so-called extraordinary are a group of humans who are born with extraordinary powers. Since the Yan and Huang dynasties, there have been traces of extraordinary beings, and later scholars have even made outrageous claims that Emperor Qin Shi Huang was a transcendent. In short, as time moves closer to modernity, the number of superhumans also increases, and the world has undergone tremendous changes due to the massive emergence of superhumans. Powerful superhumans possess powers that defy common sense, and some even remain unchanged in the face of conventional weapons. Even weaker superhumans have far greater strength and status than ordinary people. Especially due to the existence of superhumans, the gap between ordinary people and superhumans becomes increasingly apparent after countries join forces to form a federation. Unfortunately, after the development of secondary sexual characteristics in the body, the average extraordinary person will have some manifestation. Unfortunately, he is not an extraordinary person. That's also why Jiang He can only live in a garage of about 20 square meters and has to spend the whole day with dog poop. The extraordinary. There's really no way. If it was a superhero who committed the crime, it would be difficult to find evidence. It is estimated that the security office in Binjiang district also has doubts, but they are also afraid that it is actually Jiang He who committed the crime, so they temporarily detained him. Moreover, even if Jiang He is later confirmed innocent and released, the blame for being charged with murder can only be borne by himself. It is impossible to seek revenge. The strength gap between ordinary people and extraordinary people is not sporadic. It feels great to have the ability to do whatever you want. Jiang He finished his sentence with emotion and suddenly felt as if his gaze had blurred for a moment. He rubbed his own eyes, but the originally blurry vision suddenly became clear. Another thing appeared in front of me. Confirm that the host is in prison and is accumulating upgrade points. Jiang He physical strength. 0, physical strength. 0, extraordinary resistance. 0, facial perception. 0. Action speed. 0. Qi and blood recovery. 0. Brain power calculation. 0. Upgrade points. Accumulating, Jiang He looked at the panel in front of him and was momentarily stunned until he heard the old man next door farting towards the wall, which made him realize. This can be considered a golden finger, or is it my extraordinary ability that has been lost for many years since the development of my secondary sexual characteristics? And looking at this thing, it seems like I'm going to jail to upgrade. Is there anything else like this? Pure 16-year-old newcomer new book, kneeling down for everyone's support. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Spider-Man turns out to be myself. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Spider-Man turns out to be myself. On the first night of detention, Jiang He didn't sleep very comfortably. It's not that the steel wire bed is too hard, there are too few bedding on the body, or there is a foul smell coming from the wrapped toilet. The main issue is that the old man next door's snoring is a bit too loud, mixed with some difficult to understand dream words. At 6 o'clock, all the staff in the detention center had to wake up on time and wash up collectively. Jiang He struggled to get up from bed and then glanced at the information flow that appeared in his view yesterday. Jiang He physical strength. 0. Physical strength. 0. Extraordinary resistance. 0. Facial perception. 0. Action speed. 0. Qi and blood recovery. 0. Brain power calculation. 0. Upgrade points. 5. On the first night in detention, I earned 5 upgrade points. Jiang He's spirit suddenly lifted. How to allocate the upgrade points with 5 points is a question. After a brief reflection, Jiang He split these 5 upgrade points and added 2 of them to the column of facial perception. As soon as the upgrade points of 2 points were added to the perception of facial features, Jiang He's mind began to flood with information. The whispers and heartbeat of the guards and detainees in the detention center almost instantly flooded into his mind. He could hear the sound of the soles of the guards rubbing against the ground in the corridor of the detention center. I could smell the sweat and odor on the greasy man's body outside several detention rooms, feel the subtle changes in humidity and temperature in the air. These are all standards that can affect a person's judgment of the comfort level of the current environment. But Jiang He didn't feel any of the impact last night. Hiss. Jiang He rubbed his head, feeling the sudden influx of a large amount of information into his mind was not pleasant, and he needed some time to adapt. Dang 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 dang, last night, the guard who brought Jiang He in knocked on the iron door of the detention room with a cup of soybean milk in his hand. He said impatiently to Jiang He, "Hurry up, you are the only one left to wash up. Don't want to have breakfast." All right, Jiang He moved his body and walked out of the detention room. Under the surveillance of the guards, he went to the same restroom and did a morning routine. Taking advantage of this time, Jiang He has also figured out where to add his remaining 3 points. He added the remaining 3 points to the physical strength column. After all, he was in prison, and his weak little body and pale face may not be targeted by anyone. It is necessary to have some self-protection power. At least if someone wants to pout hard on themselves, they can't have no resistance at all, can they? Just as he added 3 points to the column of physical strength, Jiang He's toothpaste in his hand flattened into pieces with a thud, and the contents flew out instantly, creating a perfect parabola in the air. Then it landed on the face of a brother next to it. Ah! The toothpaste just fell into my eyes. The prisoner let out a scream, covered his face, and knelt directly on the ground. It hurts. It hurts. Who shot me in the eyes? The guard on the side heard the commotion and quickly ran over. Don't make any noise. What's up? Let me see. He walked up to the prisoner and watched him kneel on the ground, smearing toothpaste all over his face, unsure of what to say for a moment. After a long time, the guard finally choked out a sentence. Toothpaste is used for brushing teeth, not for washing face. There is a special soap for washing face. Your mind is twitching. Bang! As soon as the guard finished speaking, he heard another crisp sound in his ear. Looking back, water splashed out from the base of the faucet, while Jiang He, as the initiator, held the faucet in one hand and looked at him innocently. He originally thought Spider-Man was all about acting, but he didn't expect his power to level up. Before he could master it, he could actually break the faucet. And it was very easy. Jiang He just lightly twisted the faucet, and this thing broke on its own. Crunchy like a piece of paper. The guard is also confused. Isn't this faucet just replaced? How did it break directly? How much money did you swallow up to create such a tofu residue project? There were a lot of prisoners watching around, and the guards shouted loudly, evacuating the idle people here. Don't look. Let's go have breakfast. Don't want breakfast anymore. He gestured to Jiang He to put down the faucet in his hand and said, "You also go eat for me. I will report this to the higher-ups, you don't need to worry." Okay. Jiang He immediately ran away and found the old man next to his detention room, and walked with him to the cafeteria of the detention center. "Is that your kid?" The old man recognized Jiang He. "Did you break the faucet just now?" "Not me, my hands too." The old man looks quite old, and he didn't understand what Jiang He meant by this sentence. Anyway, he just laughed and said, "All right, come with me and I'll familiarize you with the process here." Jiang He asked curiously, "Do you seem quite familiar with this place?" "How did you get in, sir?" Touching his own beard, the old man chuckled and said, "Speaking of it startles you. I was forced to come in because of the contradiction between machinery and humans, which has escalated to the contradiction between humans. Simply put. Touch porcelain. Dot. Jiang He remained silent for a second. It's a bit too brief. The two people had their breakfast today at the canteen and it was also simple and simple. A bowl of white porridge, a tea egg, and a deep-fried dough sticks were better than Jiang He outside the detention center. Carrying a plate, Jiang He walked to the dining table. He was about to ask the old man about the Nazihui mentioned yesterday, but suddenly heard a commotion coming from behind. A tall and strong man was walking past the first table in turn, and then took all the tea egg from each prisoner's hands. The group of people who were taken away with tea egg were also silent, but their expressions were a little uncomfortable, but they did not dare to attack. Jiang He roughly guessed why, but still asked the old man, "What is that man doing?" The old man glanced at the man and said, "Oh, normal. This person is just a local tyrant from the coastal area. He has a bad temper, is tall and strong, and the people here dare not provoke him. They are afraid that he will come knocking on him after going out, so they dare not speak no matter what they do. What era is this, and what kind of thing is there?" Jiang He thought this kind of thing could only be seen in the movie plot, but he didn't expect it to provoke him. Coincidentally, the local snake has come to Jiang He and the old man. It happened to see that he was a new man. With a grin on his mouth, he reached out his hand and went to Jiang He's deep-fried dough sticks. The old man didn't want to do anything, so he put his tea egg beside him. "Hey, wait a moment." Jiang He suddenly grabbed the hand of the local snake, turned his head, and stared into his eyes. "What are you doing?" The voice of the local snake sounded a bit like it had been run over by a road roller. "I don't know who I am." Jiang He replied, "It doesn't matter if I know who you are, but I have a question. I want to test you. Do you know Tyson?" The local snake was a bit confused and said, "I know, this has something to do with you giving me things now." Shaking his index finger, Jiang He's mouth showed a smile. "Tyson can't kill your mother with just one punch. But I can." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. I miss my father, Wuwu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. I miss my father, Wuwu. The old man's eyes widened, and he didn't expect Jiang He to look like a white and clean young man who could say this sentence in his mouth. And he didn't expect that Jiang He would say these words even after clearly informing him that it was not easy to deal with local snakes. Is there not much left in his household registration? How arrogant. As soon as the local snake heard this, its expression suddenly changed, and its eyes almost burst into flames. It immediately wanted to punch Jiang He in the face, letting him know why the monkey's buttocks were so red. But before his fist could be swung, a clear and piercing sound came into his own ear. A sharp pain was transmitted all the way through the wrist to the brain, and the local snake lowered its head and saw Jiang He grabbing the hand on its wrist. Jiang He's hand is exerting force, while the hand bone of the local snake has been severely fractured. Under the skin and flesh, his bones are bearing a completely unbearable weight. Ah ah ah. It hurts so much. You let go. The local snake knelt down directly on the ground, tears streaming out of his eyes. His other hand slapped Jiang He's hand, but Jiang He remained motionless and continued to exert more force on his hand. Brother. Big brother. You let go. Don't stop, don't stop. It hurts. It's about to break. Dad. I'll call you Dad, can't I still do it? Dad. A terrifying cry echoed into the ears of everyone in the cafeteria, and the roar was like that of a filial son kneeling in front of the operating table, his father being pushed out of the operating room, feeling extremely sad. The guard finally arrived late and looked at the local snake lying on the ground, tears streaming uncontrollably. He then glanced at Jiang He next to him and asked, "What's the situation?" Jiang He took a sip of warm white porridge and replied, "I don't know. Maybe I looked too similar to his father when we were young. We couldn't help ourselves when we were in deep love. Where can we finally summon souls?" The old man didn't hold his breath, and the kanji in his mouth almost didn't come out. Approaching the local snake, the guard tapped his face and asked, "Are you okay? Who hit you?" Just as the local snake was about to get up and accuse Jiang He of his atrocities, it was kicked on the thumb by Jiang He. This kick was like a heavy refrigerator hitting the back of his foot, causing the local snake to almost faint. No, no one hit me. The expression of the local snake at this moment was even more distorted than attending the funeral of its 9 tribes. I miss my father, Wuwu. As long as no one hits you, if your hand is injured, go to the medical room. A doctor will treat you. After the guard finished speaking, he stood up and gently tapped Jiang He's shoulder with his baton. Let's not do it again. It seems that the guard knew what had just happened, but he also noticed the atrocities committed by the local snakes on a daily basis, so this time he did not hold Jiang He accountable. All right, sir, I'm such a great person. Jiang He showed a classic and unparalleled smile and gestured okay to the guard. The guard left, and Jiang He glanced at the half-dead local snake lying on the ground. Everyone has left, don't pretend to be dead, get up. The local snake didn't react. If you don't get up again, you'll end up with no children or grandchildren. The local snake immediately got up from the ground, even though there was unbearable pain in his arms and toes, he still shrank his head and spoke with fear, "Big brother. Didn't you just call me, Dad? Why did you suddenly distance yourself?" The local snake felt the gaze of the criminals around it, unwilling to utter that word, but the thought of Jiang He's terrifying grip and stampede just now made its scalp tingle. Helpless, he could only reply with a red neck and a hard scalp, Do. Dad. Rolling calf, next time I see you snatching someone else's eggs to eat, I'll make you have no eggs in your life. The local snake nodded repeatedly and fled in a gloomy manner in front of everyone's sight, running towards the direction of the medical room. Jiang He was just about to peel eggs when he noticed that his facial perception had been upgraded. He looked back and saw that everyone in the cafeteria was looking at him. Thank you. A prisoner whispered a sentence. The eyes of the criminals around are also filled with respect and gratitude. After all, the criminals who are locked up in the detention center are not particularly vicious. Everyone is an ordinary person, and under the heavy pressure of this local snake, they will definitely express gratitude. You're welcome, but I won't give you my tea egg. Speaking, he peeled off the eggshell and then stuffed it all into his mouth. The thank you prisoner showed an awkward smile. Is he still worried about taking his egg? The local snake taught me, you taught the local snake, and I even took your egg. I have a brain pit, right? The old man gave Jiang He a thumbs up and said, you kid, you're really good. I thought you were doomed just now, but I didn't expect you to be good either. The old man didn't think about the side of the extraordinary either, because the place where the extraordinary was imprisoned was different from the place where ordinary people were imprisoned. If he could be assigned a place with himself, then Jiang He must also be an ordinary person. It's just a small matter of punishing evil and promoting good, learn from Batman. What? What kind of hero? There are too many superheroes for the white man, there are no features that I can't remember. The one with the most deaths of parents. Oh. It's him. Having finished breakfast on his side, Jiang He took advantage of the old man's slow eating and asked, by the way, what's your surname, sir? Don't have your surname G, just call me Uncle G. Chicken. Which chicken? Ji Chang's G. Oh, I see, Jiang He nodded, expanding on what they had discussed last night. Gee, do you know that Lu Zi will have more information? Uncle G drank most of the porridge, swallowed it and exhaled a mouthful of hot air. Then he replied, yes, the local villain you just taught a lesson to is from Liuzi Club. You can just ask him. Is there anything else about this? Isn't it true that people in the Willow Seed Society are all extraordinary? Isn't that person just an ordinary person? Even ordinary people can join the Willow Seed Society. The old man chewed deep. Fried those sticks and said to Jiang He carefully, Lu Zihui, only the extraordinary can become an internal staff member, and like the local bandit just now, he can only be an external staff member, with only one name, but actually it is not the combat power of Lu Zihui. Understand? It's just bullying people everywhere under the banner. Otherwise, you think a member of the Willow Seed Society would go to detention? They all go directly to prison. After learning some of the intelligence on this side, Jiang He nodded and said, so it's like this. Alright, we're done. Grandpa Ji used his fingers to dig through his teeth and put the plate in the sink with Jiang He. Let's go, time is almost up, it's time for studying and working. Following Grandpa Ji, Jiang He first studied for about an hour in the study room. But the specific content of the course cannot be mentioned. Everyone just needs to brainstorm, as writing it out will lead to problems. During working hours, it is necessary to clean the entire detention center in batches. This is quite simple, just follow Grandpa Ji with a broom and pretend to be clean. After lunch, it's time for free activities. Before engaging in free activities, there is one thing to do. That's daily running exercise. But the distance of this running exercise was somewhat unexpected for Jiang He. One afternoon's time. Run 40 kilometers around the playground. A whole marathon distance. I can't finish running without dinner. Absurd. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Is broken, I am 1,000 miles away. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 is broken, I am 1,000 miles away. The playground of the detention center is divided into two parts by a huge barbed wire, which belong to the free movement area of the prisoners and the exercise area of the detention center's guards. The two guards responsible for guarding the prisoners stood by the barbed wire fence, looking across from them, their gaze fixed on a man running circles around the playground. The man is muscular and tall, with a hint of ferocity in his eyes. He breathed steadily as he ran, unable to even feel any deflations. Above his head was the scorching sun, and he ran more than 20 laps without breathing. Obviously, he was not an ordinary person. The director is still impressive, a guard sighed as he looked at the back of the detention center director running around the playground. You've been running around the playground at a constant speed for almost 20.30 laps, haven't you? You can't even see any fatigue. That's right, they are extraordinary. You know, a hammer, not to mention running. Go up and ask someone to punch you, and you can lie on the ground and write a suicide note. So ruthless. Otherwise, why do you think they are qualified to parachute into the position of the director? The guard spat on the grass. In our place, as long as you are an extraordinary person, you can at least become a squad leader. Not to mention that the director is still a third-level extraordinary person. Can that be the same? From level 1 to level 9, it can be considered as a clear and easy-to-understand division of superhero strength released by the federal government. A first-order extraordinary person, even if their abilities are not of great use, can still live as a squad leader in the detention center in the Binbian district. As a third-level extraordinary, the director naturally holds a higher position. As soon as he arrived at the guard post in the Binbian district, he was arranged to be the director here. The entire security station, along with personnel of all sizes in the detention center, from police officers, prisoners, guards to all cadres, must listen to him, and his words have absolute power in this place. You see, as someone who is extraordinary, he runs 20 or 30 laps without breathing. And then look at the group of ordinary prisoners behind him. Running 600 meters is like dying. Can that be compared? Isn't that also a difference? The two guards turned around and looked at the scattered group of prisoners running on the other playground, shouting, "Let's all run. I don't want to eat tonight. How many laps are these? Let's run well." Next door, the director of the detention center finished his warmed-up exercise, picked up his water bottle from the grass, and drank it into his stomach. He watched the group of prisoners running away like zombies, his gaze fixed on them, as if observing a horse race. On the playground, Jiang He followed a group of prisoners at a steady pace, completing the entire marathon. For ordinary people who have not undergone standardized exercise, it is definitely quite difficult to persist. After all, that's 40 kilometers, not 1 kilometer during the college entrance examination physical examination, which is 40 times more. For these ordinary prisoners, this is simply challenging the limits of humanity. Jiang He also knows the difficulty of a 40-kilometer long run, especially for someone like himself who doesn't know how to properly allocate energy for a marathon and hasn't persisted in exercising. However, this is not a problem. He glanced at his information flow. Jiang He physical strength. 0, physical strength. 3, extraordinary resistance. 0, facial perception. 2, action speed. 0, chi and blood recovery. 0, brain power calculation. 0, upgrade points. 3, over the course of a morning, Jiang He accumulated 3 upgrade points by going to jail. Although the pattern and efficiency of accumulating these upgrade points are not yet clear, these 3 upgrade points are undoubtedly extremely useful for Jiang He today. If you want to run 40 kilometers in an afternoon, your physical strength naturally needs to improve. Jiang He decisively added 3 upgrade points to his physical strength. Soon, he felt a warm current extending from his heart to his limbs, nourishing every part of his body. It's like a thirsty person suddenly tasting liquid, and using the word refreshing to describe it is somewhat lacking. Get 5 words. It's so fucking cool. The pace under his feet became lighter and faster. Jiang He instinctively lowered his head and observed his lower limbs, a feeling he had never experienced before. The speed he had originally maintained even surpassed that of the prisoner standing beside him. The prisoner next to him couldn't take a few breaths, but as he watched Jiang He inexplicably accelerate, he muttered to himself, "Damn it, are you crazy? You have to run 40 kilometers, why did this guy accelerate just now? Don't be so desperate." Jiang He gradually increased his speed, but his physical strength seemed to be completely undamaged. He kept running at high speed, but couldn't even feel any fatigue. At this moment, a line of words flashed through Jiang He's mind. It's broken. I have become a 1,000-mile horse. As the running speed increased, with the passage of time, the gap between Jiang He and the group of prisoners just now widened, and he had already passed by the same person several times. Coincidentally, 2 inmates were slacking off for a few minutes under the guise of using the restroom when Jiang He caught up from behind and greeted them. "Brother, did you also use the restroom just now?" "No," Jiang He replied with a steady breath, "I have already run 5 laps." Upon hearing these words, the 2 prisoners were stunned for a second and said, "No, I just took a pee." "It took so long. This guy has already run 5 laps since going to the bathroom. Are you not joking with me?" They followed the group of prisoners just now and asked how many laps they had already run. These prisoners were panting like cows and sweating like rain one by one, and after a long pause, they finally said, 3 laps. Ah! Across from the barbed wire, the director put down the water bottle in his hand and his gaze fell on Jiang He, who was mixed in with the crowd. "This guy, have you practiced it before?" If it weren't for those who have practiced, after running 5 or 6 laps, could they still not even breathe? The director himself has never watched a marathon race, nor experienced running 40 kilometers as an ordinary person. However, in his impression, there are not many ordinary people who can run over 2,000 meters at a high pace, maintain such a smooth breath, and maintain their normal complexion. Seeing the 2 guards next to him still happily, the director called out through the wire mesh, "You two, come here for a moment." The 2 guards shook their bodies and quickly put the things in their hands into their pockets. Then they stiffly approached the director and saluted, "Hello, director. Thank you for your hard work. Don't talk about anything," the director pointed towards Jiang He. "Is that guy new here?" The guard lifted his hat and saw the back of Jiang He running. He nodded and said, "Report to the director." "It's new. The number is SB666. "What number?" "Report to director." The system randomly arranges and combines numbers. A bit speechless, but the director still brought the topic back and said, "Is that guy an ordinary person?" "Report to the director." "It has already been tested during detention and is indeed an ordinary person." "Are you really an ordinary person?" "That's really amazing." Another guard cautiously asked, "Director, is there any problem with that prisoner?" The director waved his hand and said he would no longer discuss the matter. "It doesn't matter, just keep an eye on this group of runners. Also, I have seen what you have in your hands. I will voluntarily submit it later, and then write a review in 2,000 words. Please submit it to my office before tomorrow. Do you understand?" The 2 guards let out a mournful cry, took out the cigarette they had just hidden in their pockets, found a corner, and reluctantly enjoyed their last one. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Young people nowadays are really amazing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Young people nowadays are really amazing. The afternoon passed quickly, and Jiang He, as the first prisoner to run 40 kilometers, sat early in the cafeteria and began to enjoy his dinner. He ran 40 kilometers and even took less than an hour, but as he ran, he forgot how many laps he had run before finally reporting to the guards with the second person who had completed 40 kilometers. The second prisoner who ran 40 kilometers was almost collapsing and had to support the wall to barely stabilize his figure. He glanced at the lively Jiang He next to him, somewhat skeptical whether he was running the same distance as this guy. This guy didn't run 5 or 6 laps less, did he? Noticing the other person's gaze, Jiang He looked at him and gently patted his shoulder. Kidney deficiency, sometimes after overwork, is normal. You don't need to feel inferior. Prisoner. There are still some prisoners who did not persist, lying on the ground early and lying down, ultimately missing their own dinner. Ji was one of them, but he was different. Ji had just run 300 meters when he dodged and fell to the ground, howling uncontrollably. Finally, he was carried into the medical room by the guards. This also allowed many prisoners to learn, but in the end, they were kicked off the ground by the guards and pointed to the leader Jiang He, saying, can young men learn from others. Even if you pretend, you won't want to have dinner tomorrow. After a day of hard work, Jiang He returned to his detention room and began to vaguely feel delayed muscle soreness gradually affecting him. But after all, he has already strengthened his physical strength for a round, so he is more relaxed and comfortable compared to those prisoners who are lying on wire beds motionless and have no intention of rewarding themselves. At least Jiang He can still stand up, and once other prisoners lie down, they can't stand up at all. The feeling of muscle soreness is mild, but it still exists. Jiang He glanced at his information flow. Jiang He physical strength. 3. Physical strength. 3. Extraordinary resistance. 0. Facial perception. 2. Action speed. 0. Qi and blood recovery. 0. Brain power calculation. 0. Upgrade points. 4. In the afternoon, the upgrade points accumulated through imprisonment increased by 4 points. It seems that as long as you are in prison, even if you exercise on the playground, it still falls within the scope of imprisonment. Jiang He added 2 evolution points to the Qi and blood recovery column. If his physical strength enhances his endurance and running speed, adding points to the Qi and blood recovery column should also help him quickly overcome the feeling of muscle soreness. As expected, when 2 points were added to the recovery of Qi and blood, Jiang He could clearly feel the same warm flow spreading from his heart and gradually spreading to his whole body, just like when he was running. The soreness and swelling in both legs are gradually easing, and from the beginning, it took less than 10 seconds for Jiang He to feel this discomfort again. Does it feel like it's gone? Before Jiang He could even react, the discomfort had completely disappeared, as if he had never experienced a marathon of tens of kilometers during the day today. I feel like there won't be any problem with another few dozen kilometers tomorrow. Oh. Grandpa Ji let out a mournful cry in the detention room next door. My old waist has really suffered from old guilt. The guard responsible for tonight's duty put down the newspaper in his hand and impatiently called out to Grandpa Ji, "Don't make noise, you've been arguing all day. Since the medical room has released you, you must be fine. Don't make noise, can you learn from the young man next to you?" Uncle Ji let out another howl. "Oh, don't you see how old I am? How can my old waist withstand such torture? Why didn't you think about your old waist when you hit the porcelain? If you hit it, you'll have to be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life." The guard's words didn't sound so friendly. Abandoning communication with Grandpa Ji, the guard shifted his gaze to Jiang He and said, "Brother, have you practiced?" Jiang He didn't understand his meaning for a moment. "What have you practiced before?" "Stop pretending, I can tell that you must have been a professional marathon runner before you came in." The guard pointed to several other inmates in the detention room. "Normal people run 40 kilometers and are half dead like them. Where can they run and jump like you in the cell? You said you haven't practiced, and I don't believe it myself." Jiang He's gaze swept over the other detention rooms, and indeed every prisoner was lying on a steel wire bed now, like a disabled person with hemiplegia. No one could be like him. "Yes." He turned around and said to the guard quite seriously, "After all, I'm a sports student." There was a rare silence in the detention room, and after being guarded for a long time, he barely managed to hold back a sentence. "Now sports students. Can they compete for a profession? They are so young and promising, this young man." In the director's office, the director who had just completed all the tasks at hand today placed his pen on the desk and rubbed his temples. He parachuted into the Binbian District Security Office, serving as both the security office and the director of the detention center. He felt the intensity of work in the recent period and sighed from the bottom of his heart. Farming is still suitable for me. He lay back on the chair for a while, and suddenly, as if remembering something, he pulled out a copy from the pile of documents just now. That is a detailed record of a prohibited item transaction case near the Binbian District chemical plant. Is there a particularly good criminal who can run? The director muttered to himself, looking at the detailed description of the criminal in the record. The description states that the prisoner is extremely skilled in running and has excellent endurance. He quickly threw off the pursuit of the police officers and turned into a dark alley. The police car was unable to chase him and eventually escaped the encirclement net, which does not rule out the possibility of being an extraordinary person. According to the above statement, once the criminal starts running, none of the police officers can catch up with him. In addition, the transaction location chosen by the criminal is a complex location that vehicles cannot enter. If no one can keep up with him, it is not easy to catch him solely by relying on the personnel configuration of the waterfront security station. The question is, where can we find someone who can catch up with this guy? A figure suddenly appeared in the director's mind. He personally observed Jiang He's running during the day today, and even the director himself was surprised by his durability at a high pace. If he comes to pursue that criminal, can he catch up? Collect, recommend tickets, monthly tickets, and follow up. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Muscle Man turns out to be myself. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Muscle Man turns out to be myself. The next morning, the 6 o'clock alarm clock rang on time. Jiang He was the first to tidy up his bed and walked out of the detention room under the supervision of the guards. The other prisoners were all pale and lethargic, apparently tormented by muscle soreness from last night that prevented them from sleeping well all night. And even today, their legs are still a bit disobedient to their own commands. They have to support the wall every step they take, otherwise they will have to transform into the petite wife in the arms of the domineering CEO, accidentally falling into someone else's arms. Uncle G is fine, after all, he ran 300 meters yesterday. After his waist injury was relieved, he acted much better than those people. In the bathroom, Jiang He was a bit cautious this time, pinching the faucet with 2 fingers and then lifting it up very gently. The faucet was finally not destroyed by him this time. During breakfast in the canteen, the local snake who was taught a lesson by Jiang He yesterday bowed his head and walked over, picked up the tea egg on his plate and put them into Jiang He's plate. Jiang He glared at him, and the local snake trembled, and immediately responded to him, ready to give him the deep-fried dough sticks in his dinner plate. Why? Jiang He immediately rebuked his behavior. Using chopsticks, are your hands very clean? The local snake is speechless and can only obediently follow suit. Mr. G, who was sitting across from him, gave Jiang He a thumbs up and said, "You're really good. It's the first time I've seen someone treat this guy so obediently, it's amazing." Jiang He said, "It's a small matter, it's much simpler than eating 2 at the same time. Why is it difficult to eat 2 deep-fried dough sticks at the same time?" Uncle G was puzzled. Jiang He took a mouthful of porridge. "I don't necessarily mean deep-fried dough sticks." Grandpa G was taken aback for a moment, and then realized it later, "You kid. You're talking yellow." Today's 40 kilometers were still simple and easy, but Jiang He noticed that there was someone standing across from the barbed wire all day, waiting until he finished running before leaving. Jiang He inexplicably felt a chill in the backyard. After all, it is a detention center, and it is not impossible for such incidents to occur. In short, after enduring a day in detention today, Master Jiang, who had been imprisoned for a whole day, began to observe his own information flow. Jiang He physical strength. 3. Physical strength. 3. Extraordinary resistance. 0. Facial perception. 2. Action speed. 0. Qi and blood recovery. 2. Brain power calculation. 0. Upgrade points. 10. Plus the 2 remaining upgrade points for Qi and blood recovery last night, Jiang He's available upgrade points for distribution today have reached a full 10 points. I have never fought such a wealthy war before. He was curious about the usefulness of adding points to the mental calculation column, so he added 3 points to this column first to see the specific situation. After adding 3 more points to the mental calculation column, Jiang He did not show as significant feedback as when he first added points to his sensory perception, physical strength, and physical strength. However, he could subtly sense something was wrong. He calmed down and used his hearing, smell, and sensation to collect information from around him again. After making this point, Jiang He understood what the specific manifestation of adding points to the mental calculation column was. Now Jiang He's brain processing speed is significantly faster than before when he collects information through facial perception. Now, he can quickly summarize and process the collected information and obtain a result. Just like two processors from different eras, the former takes 5 minutes to process the same information, while the upgraded Jiang He can process it in just a few seconds and summarize the results. There are 15 sound sources. The smells in the air include sweat, coffee, laundry detergent, saliva, and so on. Damn it, why is there still a smell of heather flowers? Firstly, it was ruled out that the reward was his own behavior, and Jiang He calmed down and processed other intelligence. This improvement is quite obvious, and Jiang He himself feels that his mind is spinning faster than before. Now let him return to high school, at least he won't get a high score of 8 in chemistry. This is really amazing, Jiang He sighed in a low voice. Earlier, he was still thinking that he might need some time to adapt to the discomfort caused by the upgraded facial perception. Unexpectedly, he improved his mental and computational abilities and quickly adapted. So, to put it simply, my previous brain wasn't enough, right? Jiang Pu suddenly felt a deep stabbing pain in his heart. There are still 7 upgrade points. Jiang He has added 3 points to physical strength and 3 points to physical strength, and another point has been added to chi and blood recovery. Those who didn't know thought he wanted to become a saint in his flesh. After adding 3 points of physical strength and physical strength, Jiang He lifted his clothes and looked at his body. Compared to myself who was initially arrested in the detention center, at that time I had nothing special except for my well-developed arm muscles. But after adding 3 more points to these 2 columns, it was obvious that Jiang He had already begun to have a large number of muscle contours on his body. He tightened his fists, each muscle containing inexhaustible strength, and his explosive power was definitely not weak. Don't say it's Tyson, even if King Kong comes, he will have to beat him twice today. If you continue to develop like this, you will soon become a muscular man. Hurry up and cover your muscles to avoid being targeted. As people imagine, the process of fitness is attractive to women, but in most cases, a fully fit body is attractive to the same sex. Jiang He doesn't want to attract same-sex people, whether it's developing or being developed, it's not a new experience he wants to try. Xiao Jiang, are you here? Uncle Ji next door suddenly let out a cry. Jiang He came to the iron gate and grabbed it with both hands, feeling like he wanted to poke his head out. Uncle Ji, what's wrong? Did you leak urine? Go to your uncle, Ji replied, I recommend 1 or 2 dating websites. You young people know a lot, so I'll go back and find a spouse. The on-duty guard sitting directly opposite the two of them was about to cut off his pen and said, Do you two think I don't exist? Please respect my existence and be quiet. The sound in the detention room exceeds 60 decibels, so write a review for me. Grandpa Ji quickly shut up and let out a loud fart as he flipped over. The prisoner on the other end woke up and muttered in a daze, What's going on? The unlucky army is coming over. Jiang He also sat back, but just as he was sitting back, the door to the detention room was opened by someone. A man walked in, and the on-duty guard immediately stood up and saluted, Hello Captain. The captain pinched his nose, probably due to the unpleasant smell of farts in the air that he couldn't bear. But even so, he still said to the on-duty guard in front of him, I'm here to find a detainee with the number SB 666. The duty guard handed a form to the captain and said, Captain, could you please fill out a form? Talking to the detainee requires a certain process. You can write it to me later, I'm busy, the captain responded casually. Just write 1 line in the column of transaction details. The director personally talked to him. End of this chapter. Is there something wrong with chapter 7? Seeking collection, follow up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Is there something wrong with chapter 7? Seeking collection, follow up. Oh, that's so impressive. The director personally talked to me, Jiang He sighed after listening. I don't know which lucky one is going to be released early. This number sounds lucky enough, it's really good. The duty guard responded and then walked to Jiang He's detention room with the key, using it to open his cell door. Jiang He didn't understand this behavior and said, "Why? I'm going too. What I just read was your number. Who will go if you don't go? Sleeping slot, SB 666 is talking about me. What ghost number did you give?" The on-duty guard gestured for him to come out quickly. Didn't you say it's quite auspicious? Hurry up, don't delay the time of the captain and the director. Stepping out of the detention room, the captain looked up and down at Jiang He and then gestured for him to follow him. Leaving the detention room, Jiang He and the captain bypassed the playground behind them and arrived at the office building of the security station. Sitting in the elevator all the way to the floor where the director's office is located, the captain lightly tapped on the door. A calm voice came from behind the door, "Enter." The captain stood by the door, gesturing for him to enter. Jiang He didn't refuse either. He turned the door handle and pushed the door in. The director's office is rectangular in shape, with the director's desk on the outermost side and a sofa and coffee table in the middle for receiving distinguished guests. Obviously, Jiang He cannot sit there now. Pushing away the paper materials in front of him, the director's head appeared in Jiang He's field of vision. Are you SB 666? I don't really want to admit it, but the fact is indeed so. The director found Jiang He's file and saw his name. Jiang He, right. You don't have to worry, sit down first. When the other party spoke, Jiang He didn't refuse and brought a chair to sit down. Without any further ado or questioning, the director asked directly, "I've looked at your resume and it seems to be quite ordinary. There's nothing particularly outstanding about it. Have you been exercising regularly?" "It's okay," Jiang He pulled the calf without blushing or jumping. "I just practiced privately, just blindly." The director nodded and said, "Sure, you seem to be quite good at running. Have you never participated in a marathon race before?" "I don't have much interest, no matter what it is, it can be troublesome to have more people. I prefer someone." There is nothing wrong with what he said, and the director has indeed seen people who are indifferent to fame and fortune, which is not uncommon. "I see the reason why you are in the detention center is because you are involved in the murder case, and as a suspect, you are forcibly detained, right? I have also studied the file." He suddenly paused for 2 seconds, then his gaze fell on Jiang He. "Do you think you killed someone?" "Of course I don't think I killed anyone. I don't know either of those 2 people who suddenly appeared at my house." "I heard that you've dealt with similar cases before, haven't you? I shouldn't have been the first to be framed." The director looked into Jiang He's eyes and, a few seconds after he finished speaking, leaned back on the armchair. "Okay, I'm willing to believe you," he said, opening the drawer in front of him. The director took out a stack of documents and pushed them towards Jiang He. "Take a look at this," he said after receiving the document. Jiang He glanced at the contents and identified a case of prohibited item trading. He also noticed the criminal's special feature of being extremely skilled in running and having excellent endurance. He suddenly understood why the director wanted to find him. "It was today and yesterday that he saw me stand out in a 40-kilometer-long run, not an ordinary person, that's why he found me. This prisoner is indeed a bit tricky. It's really difficult for anyone to catch this guy in the security office in the coastal area." The director's tone was full of anticipation. "Do you want to give it a try?" Jiang He didn't agree to this job in the first place. He prefers to stay in prison and upgrade every day. Isn't it beautiful? Why do you have to add blockage to your heart? If the ordinary police officers at the security station didn't catch the culprit, then according to common sense, they should have sent a superhero to intervene, right? The director did not deny Jiang He's statement. You are indeed saying that in cases that ordinary police officers cannot handle, extraordinary people must be dispatched to intervene. However, as you know, once a case involves extraordinary people, it means reporting to superiors, writing applications, going through the process, and approving notes. In short, it is quite troublesome and adds to the workload. People all want to be relaxed, and no one wants to take on heavy work for no reason. As you can see, the description of criminals above is not ruling out the possibility of extraordinary beings, so it cannot rule out the possibility of ordinary people. If you can catch up with that guy, everyone will be relaxed, right? The director's statement is reasonable. Anyway, it's a double standard. No one knows if this person is truly extraordinary. As long as it is convenient for oneself to handle things, the other person may or may not be extraordinary. But Jiang He still doesn't want to take care of this matter, so it's better for him to go to jail. This kind of act on behalf of the heavens is not his style. I'm sorry, based on my education, it doesn't support me to engage in such behavior. The director should find someone else, or a superhero, to arrest the criminal. With a serious expression on his face, he stood up and turned to leave the director's office. The director really wanted to ask him what kind of education he had received, but regarding Jiang He's rejection of him, he had already anticipated and threw his ace. You are being forcibly detained in the detention center as a suspect. According to the new federal law, you will be detained here for 15 days. As long as you help us catch criminals, even if we don't catch them, I can also help you to operate from them, to get rid of the identity of suspect, to release you ahead of time, without leaving the case behind. What do you think? As expected, just as the words fell, Jiang He's footsteps squatted in place. He, this move still works. The director smiled slightly and had a confident mind. He knows that the days in the detention center are not easy to stay in, and everyone who enters the detention center is eager to leave. He believes that Jiang He cannot refuse this benefit. And Jiang He stood still because he was indeed thinking. But the things we think about and our strengths are not quite the same. That's not right. Jiang He said to himself. I didn't kill anyone. The identity of the suspect is untrue. After 15 days of detention, he will be released. At most, he will monitor himself, but he will not be able to go to prison. If you don't go to jail, then you won't be able to collect upgrade points, will you? That's just a joke. Thinking of this, Jiang He immediately turned around and sat in front of the director. The latter smiled confidently and said, Have you figured it out? What's your decision? I can promise to help you, but the conditions need to be changed. I don't need you to release me early, let alone reduce my sentence. Although the director was somewhat surprised, everything was still within his expectations. No matter what requirements Jiang He made, he could basically meet them. Whether it's money, information about the perpetrator who framed oneself, or seeking connections as an extraordinary person, one's strengths are not unable to satisfy them. Okay, you say. The director almost fanned himself with a fan to show his composure. As long as I can be satisfied, I will do my best. Jiang He's expression is very serious. After catching the prisoner, you can increase my sentence and make me sit in jail for an additional period of time. Are you having a problem? End of this chapter. Do you call this warm-up exercise in chapter 8? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Do you call this warm-up exercise in chapter 8? The director couldn't imagine that Jiang He would say such a thing. You're still living comfortably in the detention center, aren't you? Are you still thinking of getting an extra sentence? Which detainee in the detention center didn't want to leave this place quickly and try to perform well to get a reduced sentence? Now there's a great opportunity in front of you, how could you use it to impose extra punishment? You kid can't be a masochist, can you? Are you sure? The director even suspected that he had misunderstood and asked Jiang He to confirm again. Are you sure it's an increase in sentence or a reduction in sentence? Jiang He raised his eyebrows. What? Are you not convinced? It took 2 seconds to adjust his thoughts. For the director, he would prefer Jiang He to have his sentence reduced. After all, reducing his sentence is simple. If he performs well, cooperates actively, and is indeed unrelated to this case, he can be directly released. But if we want to increase the sentence, public resources are limited. Even in detention centers, it can be considered as limited public resources. If we want to waste this controversial public resource on Jiang He, we must first prepare well. In this regard, it is even more troublesome than reducing the sentence. You kid. Su let out a long breath. All right, if you want to get an extra sentence, you can get an extra sentence. I'll meet your weird demands, but I'll tell you first that you have to give me your all. If I catch you slacking off, be careful, I'll give you a reduced sentence. The director himself never imagined that one day he would use commutation as a trump card to threaten a prisoner. It's really outrageous. Jiang He also patted his chest, promising that he would give it his all. After leaving the director's office and being accompanied by the captain, Jiang He returned to the detention room. Jiang He was locked back in prison, and when Ji, who was standing beside him, saw him return, he asked, "What did the director say to you, kid?" "It's nothing." Jiang He lay on the bed, wrapping himself in a blanket. "The director assigned me some tasks and told me not to mess around. If I mess around, I'll have my sentence reduced." "What kind of thing?" Grandpa Ji stared and spoke in a long voice. "What are you giving me?" "Farewell." "Is he going to kill you?" The on-duty guard on the side sighed and said, "So the old thing is the old thing, they're talking about reduced sentences." As soon as he finished speaking, he reflected again, as if something was wrong with this sentence. Commutation. The on-duty guard dug out his ear and said, "If you mess up, I'll give you a reduction in sentence." "You made it up in your own mind." Jiang He flipped over on the steel wire bed and said, "I'm too lazy to talk to you guys. Am I talking nonsense? Just confirm with your supervisor and you'll know." The duty guard and Grandpa Ji exchanged a glance and scratched their own heads, feeling a bit inexplicable. One buttoned their own buttocks, thinking that the food they ate tonight might have gone bad. Silent all night. The next morning at 6 o'clock, Jiang He woke up and washed up with the army, had breakfast, and ended his morning study time. It was lunchtime, and Jiang He walked into the cafeteria, carrying a plate to the back of the queue. Big brother. The local snake, who had been scolded by Jiang He before, suddenly spotted Jiang He's figure in the crowd and immediately gave up its seat. "Please come this way." Everyone's gaze was focused on Jiang He, who felt a bit headache. The prisoners didn't think anything of it. Since the local snake was scolded by Jiang He once, he has never taken the initiative to trouble anyone again. Everyone is aware of Jiang He's contribution to the security environment in the detention center, and even if Jiang He wants to cut in, they have no complaints at all. But Jiang He also adhered to the fine principles of never cutting in line and never disrupting order, took the initiative to reach the position of the local snake, and then kicked him to his own position. Isn't it equivalent to not cutting in the queue as soon as you go? Is he really a genius? As soon as she walked up to the cafeteria lady, she glanced at Jiang He. The soup spoon, which was originally trembling uncontrollably, immediately became as stable as a sea-calming needle. She scooped a large spoonful of vegetables from the basket and placed it on Jiang He's plate, almost splashing the soup directly into his eyes. Poo-poo, there were several dishes in succession on the dinner plate. When Jiang He looked closely, the meat in the dishes accounted for at least 2/3, and the number of his dishes was at least twice that of other prisoners. Especially braised pork belly, he felt that the color was more bright. When it was the prisoner behind Jiang He's turn, the cafeteria lady's hand, like a sea god needle, immediately became like an epileptic possession, trembling like a sieve. Auntie, Jiang He pointed to his plate full of dishes, feeling a little uncertain in his heart. This can't be my decapitated meal, can it? It's so rich. I'm not going to die tomorrow, right? The cafeteria lady gave him a white glance and said, "This is what the director specifically asked you to eat more today and adjust your best state." Is it specifically requested by the director? The several prisoners next to them threw surprised expressions at Jiang He as soon as they heard these words. Because the detention room is also divided into several areas, they are not in the same area as the detention room where Jiang He is located. Therefore, I only knew that someone was called to talk by the director yesterday, and I didn't expect it to be Jiang He. Moreover, judging from the behavior and statements of the cafeteria lady, the director treated Jiang He quite well. This is really amazing. Facing the envy and admiration of all the prisoners, Jiang He sat in front of Grandpa Ji and let out a faint sigh. Sometimes, being handsome is really a sin. Grandpa Ji didn't know what to say. Should I say you don't have self-awareness, or are you too self-awareness? I can be quite puzzled at times. Jiang He's expression was straight. What do you mean? Do you think I'm not handsome? How to say it? If it's not ugly, it's still quite handsome. No, you're too handsome. I'm so handsome that I've lost my head. I've never seen anyone even more handsome than you, really. Upon hearing Grandpa Ji's insincere and profound evaluation, Jiang He smiled with satisfaction. Then I returned Grandpa Ji's rice to him. After lunch, after a brief lunch break, it's time for the regular 40-kilometer run in the afternoon. But this time, before Jiang He could walk to the playground, he was stopped by the captain who came to find him last night. Jiang He, right. Come with me, it's your turn to be busy tonight. The captain originally wanted to recite his number, but when faced with Jiang He's almost cannibalistic gaze, he silently swallowed the remaining organ back. Jiang He glanced at his information flow. Jiang He physical strength. 6. Physical strength. 6. Extraordinary resistance. 0. Facial perception. 2. Action speed. 0. Qi and blood recovery. 3. Brain power calculation. 3. Upgrade points. 9. Very good. It seems that before the action of capturing the prisoner, I can still add some points myself. After all, Jiang He is going to catch someone who is good at running later. In order to ensure that he can continue to be imprisoned, he directly invested 5 points in the column of action speed. As soon as the 5 o'clock movement speed increased, Jiang He immediately felt a warm sensation coming from his lower limbs. This feeling can be described with a very appropriate but not very elegant example, like the feeling of not taking off your pants in time, and finally urinating in your pants, with warm urine flowing down your legs. I have a suggestion, Jiang He suddenly spoke at this moment. Let's run to the gathering place and treat it as a warm-up exercise. The captain didn't refuse and ran casually. The next second, he could only see a phantom rushing past him. Before the captain could react, Jiang He had already rushed out like a shell, directly hitting the captain's face with a gust of wind. In general, there is only one concept in people's minds that humans can achieve this speed. Did he get hit by a mud truck and fly away? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Is here at the right time. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 9 is here at the right time. The guard responsible for picking up and dropping off the prisoners saw Jiang He running all the way to his side, and then turned his gaze to the captain who was struggling to follow behind Jiang He. The contrast between the two is somewhat obvious, one with a normal complexion and the other panting heavily. Jiang He took the initiative to board the police car being escorted, while the captain behind him held on to the back of the car and took a few breaths. He asked the guard, "Have you tested him during detention? Is this guy an ordinary person?" Yeah, the guard didn't quite understand why the captain asked such a question at this time. Testing during detention is the basic process, and the video is still retained, just an ordinary person. The captain cursed, "Isn't it because the detection device is broken? Or have young people become so powerful now? Running so fast? You don't understand, do you?" The guard proudly explained his newly learned knowledge to the captain. "He's a sports student, and it's not normal for him to run faster than the average person." The captain dropped out of junior high school and really didn't know that group of sports students could be so talented. It's really frightening for the younger generation. Seeing the guard on the side still laughing, the captain kicked him and said, "Drive." On the police car, Jiang He breathed a sigh of relief and remembered his sprint just now in his mind. "The time I spent sprinting 100 meters just now was very short, maybe only 5 or 6 seconds. Adding up these 5 points directly helped me break the limit of the peak of ordinary humans, and still far exceeded it." Oh, no. There were still 4 upgrade points left, and Jiang He allocated them before reaching his destination. After all, Jiang He is still quite careful when it comes to catching criminals. He added all the remaining 4 upgrade points to the physical strength column to ensure that he has enough physical strength to suppress the criminals when facing them. And with the addition of these 4 upgrade points, Jiang He's physical strength column directly reaches the double-digit point. That is to say, when the physical strength is increased to 10 o'clock, new information flow is displayed in Jiang He's line of sight. Physical strength has been broken through, obtaining extraordinary. Concentrated burst, what is this? Jiang He re-observed his main information flow and found that there was suddenly an additional column in his information flow. Jiang He physical strength. 6. Physical strength. 10. Extraordinary resistance. 0. Facial perception. 2. Action speed. 5. Qi and blood recovery. 3. Brain power calculation. 3. Upgrade points. 0. Obtained extraordinary power. Concentrated burst. Jiang He concentrated his consciousness and mobilized the information related to the newly acquired extraordinary power of concentrated eruption. The information is very brief, which means that Jiang He can now accumulate his strength in a short period of time and then burst out completely in an instant. The power exerted by concentrated bursts is 10 times that of normal physical strength. So fierce. After Jiang He first increased his physical strength, he was able to crush the wrist bone of the earth snake. If he had upgraded, he could have increased it tenfold. He felt like he could directly crush the earth snake's palm into pieces of paper. More ruthless than I thought, this is a tenfold increase in my basic strength. The police car quickly drove into a relatively remote and quiet old city area. As soon as Jiang He got off the car, he found a lively night market next to the old city area. Once the police officers fail to catch up with the criminal, that guy will definitely infiltrate the market, cause chaos, or get rid of the police officers' pursuit. He is an experienced veteran, no wonder he has been able to escape from the police's pursuit and interception multiple times. The director had been waiting outside the old city area for a long time. After seeing Jiang He, he threw the map of the old city area to him, which had already drawn the area he was responsible for. "Wait here when the time comes, and we will try our best to push the criminal to your position. After you see him, chase after him, preferably directly." As he spoke, the director handed a locator to Jiang He and said, "We will track you based on this thing. The success or failure depends on you." Jiang He took the locator, put it in his pocket, and then ran directly towards the waiting area. A police officer approached and asked, "Director, wouldn't it be good to have a criminal participate in the case? And he's still an ordinary person. What if the other person is really an extraordinary person?" "Let's talk about it then." The director confirmed that Jiang He was in place and immediately picked up the nearby walkie-talkie, giving orders to everyone. "Attention everyone, prepare to start implementing the action." At the moment of the order, all the working police officers in the old city area took action, and the director stayed on the edge of the old city, ready to wait for his own police officers to give him corresponding feedback. According to his prediction, one police officer after another will report to him, forcing the criminal into the designated area and then being forced in front of Jiang He. If possible, the director also wants to send a group of people to surround the old city area, making it difficult for him to escape. However, unfortunately, the security guard in the Binbian district is not staffed enough, otherwise Jiang He would not have come out to help. In the first 5 minutes, there were indeed 2 or 3 police officers who, according to the director's guess, forced the criminal into the planned route. However, just as the director was waiting for the good news to come, a different message came from the walkie-talkie. "Report to the director, there's a problem." The voice of a police officer across from the walkie-talkie said, "The criminal has been caught." Ah! The director was stunned for a second and said, "Isn't that a good thing? But the criminal is dead." The police officer's voice sounded a bit nervous. The criminal ran into a wanted criminal on the way to escape. The wanted criminal was a superhero, killed the criminal, seriously injured a police officer, and is now running towards the direction of criminal number SB666. What luck is this? Why did you run into a wanted criminal in the old city area? Or a transcendent? Not right. The director suddenly realized that the wanted criminal was running towards Jiang He's direction, and Jiang He didn't know what the criminal he was going to catch today looked like. This guy will probably go after that wanted criminal later. Isn't this seeking death? How can an ordinary person pursue a superhero? Catching up is also a way to die. Jiang He got the locator and ran away without even taking a walkie-talkie, so he couldn't get in touch at all. Hurry up. Follow the locator to find Jiang He and tell him not to pursue him. The one who will appear in front of him soon is an extraordinary person, chasing him will be fatal. After giving the order, the director asked the police officer behind the walkie-talkie, "Have you confirmed the information of the wanted criminal? Notify everyone immediately and make them ready." The police officer on the opposite side immediately recounted the information of the wanted criminal, first-order superhumans, whose extraordinary ability is to harden their bodies, can produce corresponding steel by consuming iron elements in their bodies. Try not to use hot weapons to prevent accidental injuries from jumping bullets. As a wanted criminal suddenly appeared on this side, a very rapid sound of footsteps suddenly came from Jiang He's ear, who was guarding the planned route. He poked his head towards the corner and saw a man dressed in black with a hood on his head rushing out of the alley. Judging from his flustered and hurried demeanor, you can tell at a glance that he is a petty thief who doesn't do good deeds. Very good. You're here at the right time. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. As long as one can reach that place. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. As long as one can reach that place. The criminal saw Jiang He in front and realized that he didn't even wear a police uniform. He hesitated for a moment and didn't want to waste too much time on this guy. He turned his head and ran towards another alley. And this happens to be running into the planned route. You're good at running, right? Let me see how good you are. Without saying a word, Jiang He exerted force under his feet and bounced out like a shell, braking slightly at the turn. Then, relying on his terrifying short-range explosive power, he almost caught up with the criminal in an instant. At first, Jiang He heard that once this guy started running, ordinary people couldn't catch up at all. Jiang He still had some expectations for it, but now it seems that his upgraded self is better. Even the criminal was confused. He only heard a muffled sound like popcorn coming from behind, and the next second, Jiang He stopped in front of him. But seeing that Jiang He was not hit by a car, his expression sank. At this speed? Are you a superhero? It doesn't matter whether I am an extraordinary person, what's important is that I want to catch you. The criminal looked up and down at Jiang He's clothes and found out that he was wearing the prison uniform of the Binbian District Detention Center. He immediately understood the reason. In order to fight for a reduction in sentence and leniency, why don't you come out and help the guards catch people? How about this? The criminal doesn't want to entangle with an extraordinary person here, wasting too much time. Why don't you let me go and run with me? I will introduce you to the Willow Seed Society, so that you can regain your freedom and be protected by the Willow Seed Society without worrying about the guard's investigation. How about that? He felt that the conditions he offered were very tempting. After all, wouldn't anyone really want to go to jail every day? However, Jiang He refused him. Sorry, I don't need the freedom to leave the cage. I prefer to stay in prison. Staying in prison, managing food and drink, having nothing to do, and having someone boasting to oneself all day long, can also accumulate upgrade points and become stronger. Leaving prison, facing society again, having to work, earning money, and facing immense pressure, even unable to become stronger. The trade-off between the pros and cons is that anyone who is a normal person knows how to choose. A life with organization is still better. The criminal was stunned, and he estimated the time in his heart. So it seems we still need to kill you. Your extraordinary strength should be related to speed, right? Then it will be easy to deal with. He just saw very clearly that Jiang He's explosive speed is definitely not an ordinary person. His extraordinary strength is likely related to action and speed, so he can still deal with it himself. Oh. Jiang He's gaze fell on the criminal, and his arms, exposed to the air, began to sprout sharp metal like irregular crystals. The sharp edges pierced through his clothes, reflecting moonlight in the darkness. Immediately after, he rushed towards Jiang He like a rhinoceros, waving his arms covered in sharp metal and rushing forward. Jiang He watched helplessly as the criminal charged towards him, but he didn't even move his position. When the criminal's arm fell towards him, he just lifted his hand. Then he grabbed the other person's arm. The criminal was taken aback, but he saw a bent steel plate in Jiang He's hand at some point. He used the steel plate to create a protective barrier between the sharp metal and his palm, blocking it out. Here, criminals can still understand, although they don't know why the steel plate is bent. But next, a creaking sound of transformation caught his attention. The steel plate is becoming more curved. Jiang He's hands were exerting force, but his expression remained as usual, effortless. Wait. Wait. Before the criminal could finish speaking, a crisp explosion echoed into their ears. Under the compression of the steel plate and the force behind it, those sharp metals are deforming, bursting, and turning into fragments to splash out. He wanted to break free, but it was as if he was tightly gripped by the claws of a crab. Even if he tried his best, he couldn't break free. The other arm covered in metal wanted to smash towards Jiang He, who had anticipated it earlier. With a push of his left foot forward, he firmly pressed the criminal's arm to the ground. What level of power is this? The criminal did not react, and Jiang He's displayed strength far exceeded his expectations. It turned out that the speed this guy had just shown was not related to his extraordinary strength and speed, but directly strengthened his body. This guy is definitely a third level or higher extraordinary. Luo Bang, Jiang He heard this movement and realized that the bent steel plate could not go any further. He looked up and found that the criminal had abandoned the metal of his other arm and used it all on his squeezed arm. That's pretty much the same. Jiang He's left foot didn't idle either, stepping on the criminal's wrist. With just a slight effort, the bone in the other person's wrist had already been shattered. I'll give you a try. The sharp pain caused by the shattered wrist bones made the criminal scream out in agony, and Jiang He directly used the concentrated burst obtained by adding points to accumulate some strength. And then it exploded instantly. Bang! All the inferior metal surrounding his arm exploded, and the steel plate in Jiang He's hand had deformed beyond shape. As for the arm sandwiched between the steel plates, it was like a meat patty in a hamburger, completely flattened. The flesh, bones, meridians, and blood vessels inside were completely necrotic. No, they couldn't be called necrotic. Everyone had merged into one, and it was impossible to distinguish what was. Belonging to me, I have you in me. This criminal was also unbearable. Despite suffering such pain, he did not faint directly. Instead, he lay on the ground, howling and crying for his father and calling for his mother. It was also unknown whether the innocent people he had killed before their death had called in the same way. Dong! The folded steel plate in his hand fell to the ground, and Jiang He observed the steel plate that had just fallen on his hand. Now there are dimly visible indentations on the steel plate with 10 fingers pressing against it. If it weren't for the criminal's arm flattening too early, he would have felt like he had to press through the steel plate himself. The criminal on the side was still howling, wanting to climb towards the distance, muttering, "As long as we can reach that place. Don't worry." The sound reached the criminal's ears, and he turned back in fear, only to see Jiang He squatting behind him, showing a pure smile. Now this smile brings him a sense of fear, no less than when you squat in the public restroom to defecate in the middle of the night. Suddenly someone breaks in and takes off your pants, facing your fear and panic. "I heard you're quite capable of running, but for safety reasons, I think I should do some preventive work." Speaking, he grabbed the criminal's 2 ankles. "Let's break these 2 legs for now." End of this chapter.